Hey guys, it's Lady with a final update to my 3-part mega theory on Persona 3 Reload's story, even if it has no relevance to the base game at this point. What I'm getting at is, yes, I'm aware of an October interview in which the devs confirmed the original story is not being changed in Reload. And hey, that's great! Those of you who are familiar with the over 3+ hours worth of analyses I've done on Persona 3 know I love FES's ending. But, interestingly enough, at the time of me editing this video, one of Persona's most credible leakers just dropped some news on Atlus's upcoming DLC plans for the year, which will apparently be including the answer among other things. Now, I did suggest previously that whatever changes there may be might be solely optional, perhaps something like a New Game Plus file. But with this new leak in mind, DLC is definitely another way to go about it, though I want to reiterate this is still just rumor for now. Anyway, before we proceed, I highly recommend you watch the first 2 parts to this theory if you haven't already. I'll still briefly recap the most relevant parts as necessary here, but you're gonna be best served if you're already familiar with the various mythological and meta and so many other contexts I laid out in those first 2 videos. But with that intro out of the way, here are some relevant reminders. So Persona 4 Arena's conclusion has Elizabeth starting on a fool's journey of her own, with her #1 goal being to free the protag from his burden as the Great Seal, right? Now, my follow-up video to the first theory zoomed in on the Tokyo Game Show trailer and the pretty suspicious scene involving Liz at the end. You see, the craziest thing about that trailer was that, at the time of its release, it was the first and only one to get an added surprise tacked on even after the typical logo and release date rolled. So, in other words, Elizabeth symbolically defied its ending. Now, fast forwarding 4 months after that TGS trailer first aired, and it still remains the only one to have that kind of surprise at the end. So guys, Atlus has released 3 general P3 Reload trailers since then, the Iwatodai Dorm one, the Game Awards one, and just a couple days ago, one showcasing the game's battle mechanics. And that's not even counting the trailers released for each individual party member, none of which have anything after the logo and release date roll either. So, my question is, why is Elizabeth singled out like that? Now, I'm sure some of you would point out it's just a silly and fun Liz just being Liz moment, which, you know, fair enough. Perhaps my speculation will be much of nothing in the end. But until I've played through Reload in its entirety and this supposed DLC as well, I'm gonna keep my eyes peeled, okay? An additional tidbit I want to point out is this fascinating observation made by an eagle-eyed commenter from the last theory video. In the TGS trailer, Elizabeth is seen trying to go up the down escalator, which is different from the original FES version where she was walking down the up escalator. So, could this be some hidden symbolism? Perhaps that she's fighting an incredibly uphill battle now in her attempts to achieve her wish? Not to mention maybe another sign that Liz is messing with time or timelines? And speaking of this timeline stuff, the next major part to my overall theory actually comes from the dancing games. Yeah, so hear me out, guys. Of the 3 dancing spin-offs, Persona 3 Dancing is the game that pulls the most time shenanigans stuff. And forgive me, this will take quite a bit of setup to explain. So, Persona 4 Dancing takes place on an actual real timeline. It's set during the summer after you left Inaba, and there's no everyone forgot moment, so nothing weird going on there. Now, Persona 5 Dancing, in contrast, does have a memory wipe going on at the end, but you know what? It also doesn't do any weird time hopping or traveling around P5's canonical timeline. It's all, for lack of a better term, internally contained. and I swear I'll explain more on that soon. But how about Persona 3 dancing? Well, here, Elizabeth is actually pulling some weird time stuff that Caroline and Justine just don't. Now, before I get into the specifics, I want to shout out these two amazing Reddit posts by user Resident Useless, which, by the way, no, you are not useless. Thank you for compiling all this info. So the vast majority of in-game receipts for this Persona dancing section of my theory comes from these posts. Links will be in the description as always. But okay, so something to pay attention to in P5D is that the twins say in their first social rank that this is a competition between them and their elder sis, one who abandoned her duty for her guest. This, of course, is referring to Elizabeth. And whose idea was it in these games to have a dance competition? Elizabeth's. And why did she want to have it? Because Margaret bragged about her guest and his friends solving a huge problem via dance in Persona 4 Dancing. All events that occur after P3 FES, no. And yet, the P3 protag is alive and well in P3D. Okay, so next point. Elizabeth clarifies in Yukari's social rank 4 that she herself is the one who has chosen the locations for the dance stages. Now, she does say at the beginning of the game that they are based on what lies within their hearts, but then for some reason goes on to specify within reason. And knowing that one of the canonical non-DLC dances in P3D is the Answers Arena and Heartful Cry for Aigis, well, again, Liz is the one preparing the stages, and this one would signify a point in time where the protag is already dead. So I get that the most obvious answer to all this is that it takes place in the Velvet Room, a place beyond time and space and matter and yada yada yada. Okay. Yes, that's all certainly true. But Persona 5 stages and timeline, in contrast to P3D, does make internal sense to its own IP's canon. For one, this Dream Night must be happening at a time post-defeating Yaudabaoth, since the twins state that the stages are all based on locations already familiar to the Phantom Thieves. But lady, explain why the twins aren't just a single Lavenza then? Well, interestingly enough, there's an actual option to ask them why they're split into two once more, and their response is that they can just unfuse and refuse together at will now. I can't quite find the exact moment they said this, but there are many different Reddit commenters mentioning this, so it seems pretty corroborated, but that's not all, because the actual Lavenza DLC dance confirms her ability to do this, since there's this part where she splits into her twin's form before refusing right back. So yeah, not much of an answer, but nevertheless something that was deliberately addressed. And P5 Royal only built on this lore tidbit in the optional Lavenza fight, with her splitting into the twins in order to all-out attack. Now, it could be argued that P5D simply didn't have many stages to work with since it came out before any of the other P5-related spin-offs. Q2, Strikers, the Royal Upgrade, and even the recent Tactica. Meanwhile, P3 already had its updated releases out, so why not take advantage of them for additional stages and tracks? So yeah, I can understand this point. However, it's still just so oddly fascinating to me that Liz deliberately confirmed she's the one selecting these stages. At this point, I want to bring up the Plume of Dusk section from part 1 of this theory series. Elizabeth is the only Velvet Room attendant who can reward the players with this item, something that's generally overlooked in Persona lore, even though it's described to have the ability to affect time. For example, this is what the Kirijo group conducted their experiments with. You know, the ones that resulted in the 25th hour of each day. On this note, another sus thing about P3D is how Shinji's DLC has him dancing on the top of Tartarus where we fight Nyx, which should technically not be possible since in the OG he was already dead by then. Meanwhile, the equivalent of party member DLC in P5 Dancing is Akechi, right? And his stage is timeline consistent since, while he is dancing on his own grave, it's nevertheless a location he's been seen in canonically. But yeah, reminder that Elizabeth said the P3D stages are based on what is in their hearts within reason. Now, finally, to wrap up this dancing spin-off section, P3D was one of the first major Persona 3 related things to feature heavy water imagery, mostly via its opening. Again, something covered in my original theory video, and water has been a big part of P3's identity, at the very least visually, in all the years since, especially now with P3 Reload. Since we're back on this topic of water, you know what else started to feature this though? The last two Persona 3 movies. And it sure looks like Reload is taking a page out of this adaptation. Off the top of my head, there seems to be more focus on establishing Ken and Shinji's relationship earlier, selling the slice of life events with C's a bit more, as well as including more Roji bonding stuff, supposedly at least. All things the original game lacked. In my latest theory video, we covered just some of the Evangelion connections, water being one thing and Kaworu and Roji being another. And speaking of, you know how Roji and Pharos are one and the same? Well, interestingly enough, really the only times water is portrayed in a figurative and/or stylistic way in the movies are when the protag is talking to these two, namely the beginning of the third movie with Pharos and in the fourth movie with Roji's conscience. Though actually there is one other major time this water imagery is used, and it just so happens to involve a certain someone we've been talking about all video. So, there's this whole sequence of purely black and white scenes in December, in which Makoto is recalling the friendships he's made with C's throughout the year. But get this. All the things depicted either weren't shown in the movies or had yet to even happen. The group photo, for example. This is most likely referring to the celebration after defeating the 11 full moon bosses. But Makoto was never there for a group photo, if C's even took one, in the movie adaptation. And then there's the events that haven't happened yet, like greeting the new year together as C's, or celebrating Akihiko and Mitsuru's graduation, which those of us who've played the game know is something the protag never truly got to enjoy anyway, since he was already on his last breath during that ceremony. But you might say, Lady, look, this can probably be chalked up as just artistic license, like trying to depict a depressive and somber mood, the protag trying to envision the future and just having a really difficult time. And okay, fair enough. Or maybe it could be a sign of, I don't know, flashbacks? Because see, this is the only time in the entirety of the 4 movies where this kind of monochrome color grading is used. The only other moment is when Makoto is remembering what happened 10 years ago at the Moonlight Bridge, but even then that wasn't like full-on black and white. And in general, isn't this a commonly used technique in film to depict the past? I mean, to be fair, I'm no hardcore film buff, but I can't help but notice that based off what I've seen. So, what an odd choice to do this, only for this particular sequence. But wait, what does this have to do with Liz again? Well, what if I told you that she was the one who was right there as Makoto snapped out of this nightmare sequence? And going back to the water imagery stuff, the next 10 minutes of Liz dates remind us how precious even the small things of life can be, all culminating into this sequence of Makoto's precious memories coming up as water ripples / droplets. So yeah, I can't help but think about how nowadays, with all these remakes and reboots popping up, it's not all that uncommon for works in the future to build off the previous iterations and adaptations, even if those previous iterations weren't necessarily intentionally placing hints for future stories. Though, who knows, the people who handled the P3 movies definitely were fans of the game, and P4 Arena would have already been out while the movies were in production. But at last, let's talk about Persona 3 Reload's opening, particularly this flower that only Elizabeth is seen with. So this here is a red spider lily. Long story short, it's a flower that's most commonly associated with death in East Asian culture, but also technically reincarnation, hint hint. Like, Atlus definitely knew the kind of message they were sending, since flower symbolism is a staple in Japanese literature, anime, and so on. I mean, we even have Persona 2 as the predecessor for this within the actual series. But yeah, the spider lily is originally native to China, but now grows all over East Asia, and according to Buddhist teachings, these flowers bloom along the banks of the Sanzu River, which is believed to be the passage / border to the afterlife. So essentially, this river is the Japanese Buddhist equivalent to the Greek river Styx, which if you've watched my OG theory video, you know how deep we dove into all the water and Greek imagery. Usually, the tales that involve spider lilies have to do with some kind of inevitable separation, especially between the living and the dead. This stems, from the most well-known origin myth about this flower. So it's said that the sun goddess Amaterasu created the spider lily and assigned 2 elves to tend to it. Manju was to guard the petals, meanwhile Saka was to guard the leaves. Both knew of the other but were forbidden to ever meet. But we know how most stories go. They defied these orders and eventually fell in love. But Amaterasu was not pleased, of course, and sadly cursed them to never meet again. This is said to be why, in real life, the leaves of the spider lily grow only after the petals have already died. Now, in my previous theory videos, I suggested that a sensible change they could take with Liz, while still staying true to P3's original narrative, is having her eventually realize that completely resurrecting the protag is a futile endeavor. We know she's trying to defeat Erebus for good, and all these other things, potentially including timeline resets or loops if we want to look at the other Persona 3 related media with suspicion. But an ultimately futile journey would fit with the spider lily symbolism and how it's impossible for the living to cross into the realm of the dead and vice versa. So editing lady here, I really hope to have more intricate ideas to share, especially some Buddhist samsara inspired ones. But to be completely honest, my chronic illness has been pretty bad the past couple months, and especially these past couple weeks, and I have like no brain juice left. So when/if I think of any other interesting possibilities, I'll include them in the pinned comment of this video. But also a heads up that I did use Christian, Orphic, and other relevant mythological symbolism to brainstorm other ending ideas in previous theory videos, especially my first one, and I think they're still pretty relevant, even if they'd have to be delegated to future DLC content now. All I can really say with some degree of confidence is that I feel like Elizabeth is messing around with time somehow. Oh, I do have another weird observation to just throw out there, by the way. So I've never watched Umbrella Academy before, but I just had the audacity to look up the show with the term timelines, and apparently time travel is a major thing in this series. Like, I get nowadays time-bending stuff isn't entirely uncommon in the vast media space, But it's just fascinating and also kinda sus that Persona 3 Reload decided to collab with this show of all things, given everything I've discussed in this theory series. On another related note, it's come to my attention that there are these things called Twilight Fragments in Reload that are scattered around town, but are also things that Liz can gift you. Like, forgive me if I'm not understanding it completely, since I've honestly yet to start my own game, so I've only read about these. From what it sounds like, I can't help but speculate that there may be remnants of stuff left around from past timelines or something. Like, in these pictures, they look all blue and glowy. Kinda like a plume of dust, not gonna lie. And the latter are remnants of Nyx. Which reminds me, I did have more to say about Roji, but I can't quite remember right now. Anyway, what do you guys think about all this Elizabeth stuff? I can understand the devs not wanting to change anything in base Reload, but do you think they'd try some kind of shake-up ending or epilogue in a DLC format? And what are your ideas if you think that's the case? Let me know in the comments. Also, please like this video if you liked it. I'll definitely alter or update my theory as necessary between finishing Reload and the wait for DLC. And finally, I really want to thank all my patrons and channel members for all their support, especially my Special Fusion supporters, Big Klingy, Sam Bezjak, Francesco Santoyo Rego, M. Meow Nolan, Platinum Rose, Malcolm Lowry, Unholy Biscuit, Peter Shepard, Andy, and Jimmy Tapiz.